come see it, then you're sending a message that black women cannot lead the box office globally. That you are supporting that narrative.
You define you. That's the only way to liberate. And that's why Woman King is so powerful. Because you're not just going to get an action movie. All of these women, they're humanized. And so you have to sit with us for 2 hours and 6 minutes. You have to be moved by us. You have to see us.
So there's a lot of complicated discourse happening right now around the Woman King. And for good reason. And I do think that this conversation is useful to have, to be very honest with you. The historical piece of this debate reminds us of the Agojie's participation in the Atlantic slave trade. And there's another issue brought up about this film about why is this another film that's depicting black women as wickedly strong and fierce beings, likening itself to the strong black woman trope that we know is responsible for the dehumanization and masculinization of black women, right? And furthermore, that this film is completely removed from the soft life discourse that so many black women in films are having online. But conversely, there are a sloth of people of all different sexual proclivities, gender expressions, and racial backgrounds who are loving the badass, fierceness of this movie. Power to the people.
I offer you a choice.
And I want us to explore all of that, okay? But first, I have a question. Because I think this question sets the tone for how we contend and navigate the rest of this conversation moving forward, right? In what ways do the bodies of the people who are in this film inform our critiques of this film? And we're going somewhere. Because so many of us look at films like 300, which is similar to The Woman King in that it took creative and dramatic liberties, thus removing itself from the historical context of the true story, right? But it is still based on ferocious warriors.
This is Sparta!
We meet films like 300 with such deep adoration. But the gag is, Spartans were incredibly ruthless, slave-owning warriors for the most part. No, Spartan slavery didn't look like antebellum American slavery, but we can use that logic across any form of slavery that exists in any period of time within any cultural or communal context. What matters here is that there's the same hierarchical approach to life and the value of life, right? And the enslavement of one's own people. The 300 movie wants us to believe that these were valiant white men fighting for honor, fighting for autonomy, and fighting to save their homeland. When in actuality, they were barbaric, vicious colonizers. Where was the backlash for these barbaric, violent colonizers? These people who starved and arred, because we won't use the real word, and colonized poor folk. Where was the ubiquitous critique of these white men who were fighting for their right to colonize people's bodies and their homelands?
Take from them everything!
It didn't exist. And that is why I meet so many of your critiques down my Twitter feed as, it's giving me half-baked. Just say you hate black women and go. And what I won't do is pretend like there aren't merits to this discussion. Because for me, this is not for us to question, why can't I be like my oppressor? No. This is an investigation into the sociological indoctrinated hate that drove us to castigate the Woman King in the Agojie. But to glamorize and praise the 300, the Spartans.
Sparta!
If we as a collective no longer want to see unrealistic and ahistorical depictions of violence on screen, I can respect that across the board. I can't respect is that so many of you are just perplexed at how a film could depict beautiful, brave black women and in a way where they are redefining womanhood, redefining sisterhood, redefining beauty and bravery, right? And doing so unapologetically. Now we could and we will have a discussion as to whether or not the Agojie were the best people to use as the vehicle for this conversation and to display black women in that light. But what we won't do is have selective outrage and think that I'm just gonna let that shit ride. No! If we don't want to glamorize slavery, if we want to be critical of our stories and we want to take ownership and we want to hold our feet to the fire, then let us be honest. This is gonna be a bumpy ride, ladies and gentlemen. Viola Davis said this movie is the first of its kind. Of course I want us to critique, but boycotting The Woman King is anti-black, and I'm not sorry that I said it. Fasten your seatbelts, grab that bag of popcorn, and pour that glass of wine, because we have just entered the unpopular intersection. Hey ho girl! Welcome and welcome back to my corner of the internet. If this is your first time ever seeing my face, my name is Herbie Revalis. My pronouns are he, she, him, her, hers, and hers. And yes, that does mean that I wear pants, skirts, pearls, and purses. So yes! If you are new here, the unpopular intersection is a segment on my channel where we discuss elements of pop culture, be it film, cinema, TV, music, or just celebrity gossip, buddy. And we add a critical intersectional lens to those topics. That's why I'm wearing, a turtleneck today. I'm giving you studious, I'm giving you learning, I'm giving you academia, I'm giving you all of the things. So if you're like me, you probably came to a video looking for a specific subtopic or a specific piece of tea that you wanted me to cover. I tried to create a timestamp in the description box for your viewing pleasure that describes every single facet of these videos in a way that I think you will be able to find your shawty. But in addition to that, I've also put in the description box a link to a Google forum where you can do the things that will help this channel keep the lights on. And I'm talking proverbial lights and real lights. Honey, this is not funded for free. No, but seriously, if you click the link in my description box after you're done watching this video, you can actually be a part of helping me curate and create my Patreon or my community space in which I'll be creating exclusive Patreon content. So if that sounds like something that would interest you, click the link in the description box below. But back to the Agojie. And I do think it's important that we cover not just the movie, but its problematic past and the contemporary implications that a movie like this would have on Black women, especially women everywhere, kind of, sorta, and Black femmes as a whole. Okay, now that we've gotten that out of the way, I read a powerful op-ed by Nsenga K. Burton via CNN, and I really wanted to take it one of the most powerful parts of this op-ed, an excerpt, and read it to you guys here today. Meanwhile, critics calling for a more realistic representation of the slave trade might direct their energies elsewhere. They might focus on the fact that, for instance, the school system across the United States is taking steps to erase its reality and legacy from curricula, or that many Americans dismiss it from being a big deal when discussions about slavery turn to reparations, or that the slave trade has been historically misrepresented in television and film for over 100 years. See film classics like Birth of a Nation, or Gone with the Wind, or TV classics like Uncle Tom's Cabin, or Roots, honey. I suspect that much of the criticism and most of the efforts to suppress this film are really about the portrayal of powerful Black women warriors fighting and winning battles in Hollywood that is still overwhelmingly white and male. It's not just in the movie, but in the very fact of its creation and the audience it has already garnered. Black women are winning and the trolls that oppose the film are losing. As much as it is about anything, The Woman King is about the precarious journey Black women take and the obstacles they face in the pursuit of freedom and self-determination in a world where misogyny and misogynoir reigns supreme. The Woman King is an outstanding film in the tradition of classics like Spartacus, Braveheart, and The Gladiator. The difference is that Black women are at the center of the action, both on screen and behind the camera. Oh, we're gonna get into that. Its difference is what makes the film only more worthwhile to see. Hollywood has spent much of its existence repudiating the talents of Black women. The effort of some to erase the work in The Woman King is lamentable, but it shouldn't work and it won't. Anyone who finds the film's depiction of the slave trade problematic should watch it anyway, and then join the lively debate about what worked, what didn't, and how we can be more accurately portrayed, and how it can be more accurately portrayed. There is an intellectual and cultural value, even or perhaps especially in the conflict and contradiction. I could end the video right here, right now! Thank you, Nsenga. You ate that. But we're not gonna end the video here because I have so much more to say, honey. What I do think is important is that we do not ignore the kind of downplay that this movie did of the Dahome's role in the slave trade, right? Because it is ahistorical and in many ways fictitious. Dahome's role in the slave trade was massive. Very crucial role in the slave trade. I just have to be honest about it. And trading African bodies, trading African people was their highest form of capital, as was the case for many African countries and kingdoms in the time. It's a disgusting practice that should never be praised, never be celebrated, nevertheless excused. But it can be explained, kinda, I don't know. Let's get into it. The kingdom of Dahomey, like many monarchies that we're familiar with, sought out expansion and power. Europeans were able to provide the tools necessary to attain that the most efficaciously. So let me just be clear. I am not an Africana Studies major. Independent of me not being a person who got my degree in this is work that I enjoy contending with. And what I will say is that I know that it's around 173 kingdoms, city-states, tribes, right, that were involved in the slave trade to some extent. Africans trading Africans, unfortunately, was a common practice. Of course, this was an exploitative practice, right? That's like literally what they do. It's like what they do over there, like hashtag back then. And to be honest, and me not being sensitive to these women, right? Me just being honest and objective. The Agojie were some of the fiercest, most ruthless, and in many ways, barbaric, right? In terms of their capturing and delivering of African peoples to the Europeans to be enslaved, right? No man, woman, or child was spared based off of the research that I've done. Now, I do take a bit of umbrage with this, and I'm like, I'm taking everything with a grain of salt because a lot of these were European writers. So it's like their intent is never to humanize African people, right? They view us as people. They viewed us as property, barbaric, savage. And so I must take everything with a grain of salt because I just have to be intellectually honest. However, these women were ruthless. I mean, that's the takeaway. And like I was saying, it appeared to people that they relished in their ruthlessness. And I think that has more to do with the fact that that was the only identity that they were allowed to have. And so taking pride in the fact that you get to exist and that you get to serve a system higher than you is definitely an important thing to insert, but not an excuse. What I was kind of saddened and disappointed by was the movie. Well, not disappointed because I understand what the movie was trying to do, and we'll get to that a little bit later. The movie depicted these women as going and seeing the women and children while they were, pillaging a land or whatever. They saw the women and children and they just left them alone, and that's not historically accurate. It is also important to note when we're talking about this and the ruthless nature and how they found a sense of identity and purpose as being a part of the Agojie, that a lot of these women were not given an option really, right? The ultimatum was join the Agojie or be beheaded, right? Kill or be killed, quite literally. A lot of it had to do with beauty politics, desirability politics, because if you failed to fit into the mold of marriageability, if you were deemed ugly, undesirable, unruly, then there was a lot more at stake for you because then you were sent off to be a part of the Agojie. And that's a conversation that I want us to have later about the kind of insulation from physical harm that beauty created for some women and denied other women, right? But if I'm taking a step back from the fact that this is not a documentary, this is not a documentary, ladies and gentlemen. This is not a historical account of the Agojie. This film is meant to entertain. Right? And so for that, in the same way that 300 took dramatic and creative liberties to draw you in and create a fantastical element and create a world that is aspirational and exciting and, idyllic, because this was a very idyllic film, beautiful to watch. The same could be said for The Woman King. And I think it's abundantly clear that this is meant to be fictitious because Nsenga, the lead role, the protagonist of this film, is a made-up role. Nsenga's not real. My God. Uh-oh. Back again. Now, where was I? Okay, Nsenga's a fake character. Oh my God, I have to get right back into where I was. This is crazy. Yeah, but no, Nsenga is a fake character, right? So it does beg the question, why did the director, who I quite literally love, and Viola Davis opt to, and even the white woman writer of this film, opt to depict this group of women as the woman to display sisterhood? And why do they choose to focus on sisterhood and bravery with this group of women, right? As opposed to the horrific and maybe more honest depictions of these women that they could have done. If I'm gonna be very honest with you, this is just Herbie speaking from around the way. I'm not as concerned with historical accuracy or historical correctness. What I am concerned with is historical prevalence and contemporary relevance. Yeah. I'm concerned with our ability to ingest and to understand that these powerful Black women existed, and that women can take power and can be revered, and that there's a way to find desirability in that. And I do have critiques about in this film, desirability in this film. The fictitious, if we wanted to go with the fictitious account that Nsenga was trying to move the king and thus the Agojie away from enslaving their people, then why do we have one of the Agojie engaging in intimacy or intimate relations with a colonizer? It's not making Iranian. But this film does create a world in which we're reminded of the spirit of perseverance that so many, you know, I don't feel positive feelings for the Agojie per se. No. I am reminded of the powerfulness that my mother has, that she possesses. I'm reminded of the power that my sister and my Black woman friends and the immigrant Black women who I will never meet, who immigrate to this country, and, you know, the everyday African American Black women, the Caribbean Black women, and just the power of womanhood and femininity, right? And the way that femininity is, you know, multiplicity and nuance. Femininity is so many things. And for myself, as someone who does identify as an effeminate non-binary person, it's always like, yeah, you can do femininity however you want. And I love a story that pushes the bounds of that, right? And pushes those confines. And so for that, I grew a greater appreciation for the women in my life and the women who I would never meet. And I love that, right? Because it is a love letter to women who are forced to navigate the terrain of misogyny, of misogynoir, of femphobia, of homophobia, of anti-Blackness, of queerphobia. This is more powerful than all this shit. Now, with that being said, as we're coming to the second chapter of this video, I just want you to comment right now, Agojie, and I will write how it's spelled. Just comment Agojie. Thank you for staying this far in the video, girl, through the spillage, through the talkage, through all of the things. Desirability, right? Because as much as this film fails to depict accurate historical truths, it unearths truths and conversations for us to have about particularly around Black womanhood, Black femininity, and And it's interesting, and I think it's the most interesting for me because this is taking place in Africa, right? And not that they're not influenced by Western beauty standards, because they have encountered the white man and the colonization of it all. And so I don't know to what extent they were influenced by Euro beauty standards. But what I will say is, as much as this story is about the power of Black women and, you know, Black womanhood and the warrior spirit, it is also about what happens when you, within the African context, which is an intra-communal conversation that we need to be having in a way that we have. Society gives women ultimatum, and it's about how society gives women. And so either you're beautiful or you fight for your fucking life. You fight to make your life better. You fight to make other people's lives better, right? You are merely a servant and a slave to the desires of men, be it sexual or be it labor related. Thing is that, and one thing that is made clear is that pleasure is a war that women have to engage in. It is a fight that women have to engage in. Secret to outwardly seek pleasure comes with consequences. It is a liability, but also out loud, right? When we see the relationship between Nawi and Nsenga, and we see how she outwardly wants to display that maternal affection for her daughter that she was forced to abort because she had to show strength, right? Those are the options that she was given, and she's unable to. She's unable to show tenderness, to experience pleasure and tenderness and love and softness and to nurture, and because it is not of the Agojie. That is not an experience she has access to as an ugly Black woman. And to nurture the right to be a mom, right? To take up space as a maternal figure, as a figure who has experienced pleasure and sensuality, even though that's not her story. I think when we start talking about, you know, sex and intimacy and what kinds of Black women get access to that, ugly Black women always have to fight to be included in those conversations. And this movie does a beautiful job of putting that on display in a very idyllic way. And because this video is getting a bit long and I've been talking for a long time, I have so much more that I wanted to say. But I'm gonna try to wrap it up very quickly. What I wanna say is the Agojie women were deemed ugly and unruly and disobedient to their fathers and husbands. And so because they failed to meet the societal standard of womanhood and femininity, they were placed in this category of where they must be this very violent, like vitriolic, you know, wicked group of women who still live to serve men, just in a different capacity, and one that likely brings them the least in sisterhood and black womanhood and support. The main wife, okay, this is what I wanted to say, in opposition to the point of desirability. We know that the wife, who was deemed obviously desirable in this film, it's not like her life is plush. Like she's insulated from physical harm, right? You know, in terms of going to war. But she has no real power, there's no real partnership, and so you give up things even when you're deemed beautiful as a woman because you are given ultimatums and not real choices. And so, yeah. Okay, independent of all of that, as I'm ending this video, I do want to shout out the director for the cinematic direction of this video. This is a woman-led, woman-written, woman-directed, black woman-directed, black woman-led, black woman-produced movie, and for that, we must show up. Boycotting is anti-black, so shout out to the director of this film. Shout out to the choreographer of this film. Oh my God, the choreographed fighting, the stunt choreographer. The choreography of this movie, I was looking at these fighting scenes, like they are so intricate, they are so beautiful, they are so powerful, they are so feminine, and I loved everything about it. Overall, I would rate this film a 4 out of 5, just because I think there were things that we could have been more careful about, we could have been more honest about, even though, as I said, we don't need to be honest in fictional accounts of real world things. Because this is the first of its kind, I think that there's a little bit more attention and care to the honesty that we could have, or to the honesty of this story that we could have given it. I know I'm talking weird now, but it's the end of this video and I want to actually record. And yeah, that's all I have to say today. Thank you so much for showing up. I love you too bad for staying to the end of this video. Make sure that you click the link in the description below to tell me what part of the Patreon you would want to be on to support the proverbial lights. Okay? I love you too bad.
I am in a constant state of practice, and so are you. You can never fail when you're in a constant state of practice. I love you.
Bye, Herbie.